Welcome to Joa Fitness Health Wellness Video Podcast, a space to ignite your day through positive conversations. We bring people that have created excellence in their life, sharing high vibration in their reawakening path.
Hello, happy Friday, my friends. How are you? Are you driving? Be careful if you're driving. Well, I am excited. Every Friday, I bring this podcast back into alignment to your ears. And perhaps you are cooking, you're driving, maybe you are doing another activity, and at the same time, learning so much from doctors that I invite to this show. Since 2018, I am the host of Back into Alignment. My name is Joa Rivas, and I decided to create this space because my own pain is a teacher, and I have been having back pain since I was 15 years old. Suffering of scoliosis and spine bifida has been taught me so much about what to do when you have pinched nerve on the neck or on the spine. And definitely is not fun to be having pain. It actually affects your performance, your productivity at work, your concentration. And this is why this is the biggest reason of this podcast. So if this is the first time that you're in the podcast, you can actually scroll down and listening to over 80 episodes where we have so many topics, from sciatica to neck pain to vertigo to pregnancy and back pain. There's so many amazing talks we have. And every month I invite a new doctor, a new healthcare professional. And today we have a physiotherapist here from the city of Toronto in Ontario in Canada. And I actually found her in my researches. I just been always looking for new topics to bring into this podcast. And I found her through vestibular rehabilitation, which is something that I've been interested to talk. And Michelle, so excited to have you. How are you, Michelle?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And usually the first talk, because we will have more than one talk, we will have 4 talks, 4 episodes. The first talk is just a warm up, especially to know who you are as a woman, not only as a healthcare professional, but as a woman, because we all have stories, what inspired us to be who we are and why we are really supporting our community. And you're coming from a beautiful background. You are a physiotherapist from the University of Toronto with a doctorate in the osteopathic manual practice from the Canadian College of Osteopathy. You're also a mother of 2 children that you love to play with them. And you actually went to a concert of people and celebrated. I love dancing, so I imagine you really move the body there. And so beside a mother, you work at the full, it seems like you're really busy because you actually work on the Physio Plus clinic. So there is I imagine how many people are coming in and out, plus you are managing a team. So I imagine how many hats you're wearing in this moment. Before we go deep into our topic, which we're going to be talking about back pain at the workplace, back pain when we're working specifically, because we can talk about back pain in so many situations, but today we will be actually dedicate this time to the pain when we are actually working. I wanted to first know about Michelle a little bit more, like when did you become actually curious about the body, physiology, about movement, and when did you decide to actually study physiotherapy?
So that was many, many, many years ago. I always had an interest in science and anatomy, and I love to play sports. And so I think it was the combination of those interests that sort of led me to learning about physiotherapy. I had an older cousin who was a physio, and so I had an opportunity to kind of shadow her a little bit. And I just really loved how it just brings, science, anatomy, movement, sports, it brings it all together. And that's really what got me interested in it. And so that's when I sort of, decided to go to U of T, got accepted to the physio program. And then, from there, my career has taken many different twists and turns over the years, but that sort of has been the foundation for me. It's been my physiotherapy degree for sure.
Because you were inspired by somebody in your family?
Yeah. Like, certainly my interest playing sports and just understanding how the body moves. Loving, like being excited about helping someone that has had an injury that, wants to get back to, whether it's their sport or their work, or like being able to play with their kids, like whatever the reason, there's always like, a real reason under why, they're coming to see you. And just the satisfaction and the joy that you get from a job that allows you to help people. That was really something that I have always loved about the job, about the profession. And that combined with my interests in sports and science, and my family member, my cousin who's a physio, kind of pulled it all together for me.
And because you mentioned that you like to play sports since you were very young, can you mention like your favorite sport when you were a teenager? Which one was it, this one?
Basketball by far was my favorite, which was a problem because I also played the piano. And so I got my grade 10 piano at the Royal Conservatory when I was in high school. And so my piano teacher was always getting very upset with me because every week I'd come in with another finger injury that, interfered with my ability to practice. But basketball was definitely by far my most favorite sport in high school.
Mm-hmm. And so you actually got injured when you were a teenager, and you actually you already had that approach with a physiotherapist?
So I was very lucky that I didn't have any big injuries. So, common injuries that you see in basketball can be, an ankle fracture, ankle sprain, ACL injuries, and those can be really, really big injuries. So yeah, I've had a few like little ankle sprains, lots of finger injuries. Luckily at that age, I didn't need physio. They were small enough that I was able to sort of recover on my own. So I didn't need physio for those injuries. I was very lucky for sure.
Okay. But you already had that approach of receiving physiotherapy.
Yeah, I mean, I was exposed to it because my cousin was a physio. So, I was aware of it, and I knew she worked in an outpatient, like orthopedic clinic, that sees sports injuries and people with aches and pains from day to day things they do. So I definitely had been exposed to it through her, and that was great.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, that's so exciting that you actually start become aware of your own body, your movement, and then you actually blended your curiosity with the purpose of becoming on service to the community and having this big goal becoming true. So excited to have you here. And today we're actually going to dive deep into back pain, which is something that affects so many people. We're talking about 65 million of Americans that are reporting back pain. And these are about 16 million of adults. 8% of the adults experience persistent and chronic back pain. And this is actually related to me, to my story. I had chronic back pain detected when I was 15. X-rays and MRIs reflected that I had scoliosis, dextroscoliosis. I was hunched over, and it took me 10 years to recover of the chronic back pain. I did physiotherapy. I went to chiropractors. I was doing constant yoga and Pilates, and I became a yoga and Pilates. So yeah, somehow my story and your story are actually really aligned. That's why the podcast Back into Alignment is not only related to the spine, but it's also about us, like how aligned we are with our purpose. Are we actually connected and be at our fullest right now? So this is also exciting to know that people can be in tune and be loving their careers, right? So sometimes it seems like we are obsessed, but it's just we're simply loving the impact that we're creating in our communities. So talking about the back pain, I love to talk about cost, because I think when we talk about cost, people really open the eyes. Mm-hmm. Cost. A new study reports that Americans spend about 134 billion with a B. This was between 1996 and 2016. So about 20 years, it was reported 134 billion spent only in this particular health condition, which is neck and lower back pain treatments. Now, we don't know if that actually alleviated the pain, right? Because sometimes there is like a Band-Aid, but the pain is a consistent plus a chronic back pain. So that's why I bring this podcast, because we learn so much about the connection of our body. Our spine cannot be divided in one side or the other. We are connected from our feet to our head. So we have to know that our eye, side, our jaw, our feet, that everything is connected to the spine. So something that we know that the ultimate connector between our brain and our body is our spinal cord. So please tell us a little bit about the physiology of the spine, especially if you can create that analogy of the can and the core, which I think I'm gonna show you in an image. This for those people that are watching the YouTube, for those people that are actually listening, imagine a can, and the can is just right in the core muscles, right on the trunk of our body. So Michelle, take us through a simple way to explain the importance of core muscles in our spine.
Yeah, that's a great question. So our core is so important. And I think most people today have heard, the term core and do core exercises. But what a lot of people I find, a lot of people don't really fully understand what your core is, right? Your core is that inner group of muscles. It's the deepest layer of muscles that surround your spine. It's not your superficial, people, first of all, they'll think of their superficial, their six pack, their abs, right? And that is not your core. If you peel away the superficial abdominal muscles, you'll get to the core, but it's not that superficial set of muscles. The other misconception I often get with when we talk about core is people think of the core as just being their abdominals, when in fact it's 4 muscle groups. And if you think of it, like you said, that analogy of your core being this 3-dimensional can or canister that has a top, a bottom, front, sides, and a back. And so it has that 3-dimensional aspect to it. So it's not just the muscles in the front. And so the front of the can are your deep abdominal muscles, not the superficial six pack, but the deep transverse abdominis. And that muscle is a huge muscle. It goes from your rib cage down to your pelvic bone, and it wraps around almost 2/3 of the way around your trunk. So it's massive. And it's so important that that transverse abdominis muscle is functioning well to help protect your back, right? That's one of the key muscles. But having a strong abdominal muscle is not enough, because that's only one of the 4 core muscles. So second one is your pelvic floor. And so your pelvic floor is a group of muscles at the bottom of your pelvis that basically help to support your pelvic organs. And they play a crucial role in helping to protect your back. So that's the bottom of the can. The top of the can is your diaphragm. And people certainly have heard of the word diaphragm, but a lot of people are surprised to hear that your diaphragm is actually one of your core muscles. And your diaphragm and your pelvic floor actually have to move and work together to stabilize your pelvis and your low back. So the diaphragm is the top of the can. The back of the can are the small muscles that line the spine on either side. So you have the back of the can, your back muscles. The top and bottom are your diaphragm and pelvic floor. The front and sides are the deepest layer of abdominal muscle called the transverse abdominis. And all of these muscles need to be strong, but they also need to be able to work together properly at the right time during a movement. And so sometimes a core dysfunction isn't just about the core being weak or those muscles being weak. Sometimes it can just be a dysfunction in how the muscles are how they're timing, how they're working together.
Yes, exactly. I love the anatomy of the body, and I've been teaching Pilates for 12 years. And it's actually one of the most fascinating practices that I have done since I started, because I find it's so difficult to injure yourself when you're doing Pilates. I never heard somebody getting injured in Pilates. I heard a lot of injuries through yoga, actually. There are certain movements in yoga that definitely will create impact, especially if you have herniated disc. Probably try to avoid cover-up positions. Certain positions in yoga could be actually really hard, especially if you're doing hot yoga in a hot room where your body is super flexible. Perhaps you could pull a muscle. But I never hear that in Pilates. Pilates is usually so slow and controlled. It's very difficult to actually get to injure your body, because we're so aware of the breath and the connection of the diaphragm in this compass rhythm of synchronicity on what's happening in our core. Like you were explaining, like anyone, even if you're not watching on the video, imagine a can where the top of the can is the diaphragm and the bottom is the pelvic floor. It's all the muscle surrounding is so important to maintain stability in our core. And like Michelle said, this is what is neglected. And every time I'm teaching the class, a lot of people think the core is only that, but also the core irradiates down to the muscles attached from there, right? So we're talking about hamstrings, we're talking about your inner thighs. All those muscles are also really important, especially your inner thighs. Many times we don't even train these small, tiny muscles that helps to stabilize the pelvic floor. And I actually realized about this when I got a little micro tear in my inner thigh in 2014, and I realized that wow, tear in my inner thigh, it really threw off my entire core for about 6 months. So I felt I was just sitting in a float cloud. It was so uncomfortable. So this is actually interesting. I'm sure most of the women find this connection when they're actually pregnant, right? Michelle, tell me a little bit about you and your journey with your first pregnancy.
So my kids are now 15 and 17. So you're asking me a lot to think back 17 years. Sadly, it's gone by so fast. So my first pregnancy, I think it was fairly like uneventful. I was one of these lucky women. I mean, I have to say, I went into it with my knowledge as a physio. I was exercising, I was doing a lot of core, like inner core exercises. So before getting pregnant, I feel like I was in a pretty good place. And I had been seeing an osteopath for hands-on work. So like generally speaking, I was moving well and my core was relatively strong. So I think I went into it in a good place. And that allowed me, probably helped me to have a relatively uneventful, pretty standard experience going through the pregnancy. It was, I didn't have a lot of pain during. I was able to continue exercising throughout the entire pregnancy. It was low impact. I wasn't doing any crazy running. I was doing some cardio, but I continued to do whatever I had been doing pre-pregnancy, and I was able to. And I continued to get hands-on work throughout the pregnancy, which I think helped a lot. I had a little bit of back pain that developed towards the end of the pregnancy, which is common because as as the baby grows, the abdominal muscle gets bigger and bigger. There's more pressure on the pelvic floor. So these muscles are just, they're at a disadvantage. Mechanically, when a muscle's lengthened the way it is when you're pregnant and the baby's growing, the muscles just can't function as well as they can, under pre-pregnancy or postpartum when the muscle is back into a shortened, like normal length. So I did experience a bit of back pain towards the end of the pregnancy. But it was manageable through a combination of things, a combination of some hands-on work with an osteopath that I had been seeing, and then just continuing to work on core, like continuing to just keep those muscles activated and strong, really helped me be able to kind of get through the pregnancy fairly well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, I imagine. You become aware. Also, when you are pregnant, you'd have the relaxer hormone, which makes the muscle.
Yeah. And in fact, we see, like in practice, we tend to see back pain in two phases. We'll either see them early on in the first trimester when those relaxin levels start to climb. And then often in the second trimester, it tends to not be as bad. And then in the third trimester, when your pelvis, your abdominals are lengthening, the baby is getting bigger, and towards the very end, when the relaxin levels increase and the ligaments become lax to allow the pelvis to open. So in that last trimester is when we start to see an increased recurrence in back pain and sciatica in that phase of pregnancy as well.
Yes, exactly. So are we talking about the pelvic floor muscles and these muscles that we can imagine a hammock, the muscles? They're like holding our organs. It's so important. It's just so complex, our body. We cannot forget when we get that neck pain and that lower back pain where we're sitting for long hours, especially after the pandemic. Many of the channels of delivery of work has been transferred to work from home. Perhaps you're still working with the chair from the kitchen table and you haven't really updated for something that is more ergonomic, that is more functional for our body. And this all can create impact in the spine and develop hunch over, maybe develop frozen shoulder if you're actually typing a lot, especially for people that work in the tech industry. You can see a higher level of impact in the body. So poor posture is one of the most common causes of office back pain. During the workday, a person may slide forward in the chair or slouch or lean forward. So let's actually talk a little bit about this crisis of back pain and neck pain nowadays. Michelle, tell me a little bit about your experience. What do you see coming since the pandemic?
So I agree with you 100%. It's an epidemic of neck and back pain because people have been working from home under, less than ideal conditions. Like a lot of people are at home with their partner. And so maybe they have, if they're lucky to have one office space, most people don't have two office spaces. So they're often at the kitchen table, with the kitchen chair and on their laptop. And the number of people that we see with neck pain, upper back pain, shoulder pain, low back pain, because their setup is not ideal, has skyrocketed. I think the good news is, like, for people to remember, is that there's actually a lot you can do at home that can help you, not suffer as much. And it can be a challenge because if you're dealing, you're sitting at a kitchen table, it's a kitchen table, it's not a desk. But even something as simple as just rolling up a towel and putting it in the small of your back to just give your back a little bit of extra support when you sit can take, a bad chair and make it a little bit better. And that's not an expensive thing to do. It doesn't involve you having to go and buy a $500 ergonomic chair. But that's, a simple little fix that I'll often talk to people about, because you kind of have to make do, right? You can't stop working. And people are now kind of bit by bit, they're sort of transitioning into a bit of a hybrid model where they're spending a bit of time in the office, but they're still spending time at home. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, because now that I think work from home to a certain extent is here to stay, it will be interesting to see if people, take more permanent steps to sort of, get that good chair, or stop using a laptop and use a desktop instead with a keyboard tray underneath. Like these kind of ergonomic things that you can do that cost money, that people may have been hesitant to do in the beginning. I wonder if people will now kind of start to invest in that.
Yes, and I'm actually wondering, because as I work on wellness, employee engagement, employee experience, as you know, the employees are the number one asset of any company, because they are literally fueling the company with the potential sales and the potential the operations and all this. So it's actually so crucial to have them happy and healthy so they can actually stay and build a culture of not only a profit, but also like, how do you feel in your company, so you don't decide to quit, which actually there is a new term called quiet quitting, and the great resignation that is happening now, because after the pandemic we become more aware about our health, and it is much easier to know when we are actually being burned out, which is an epidemic happening in a big level for our mental health. So as we become more aware of our physical body and our mental state, I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, from a insurance level, do you find that the programs that the companies are using now are not really targeting a holistic being, where they actually just see, okay, let's invest on a one thing, but they forget about elements that play a big role, like nutrition, let's say, or like even team building? Like, where do you think is where do you see that is the biggest gap when it comes to providing an initiative for wellness from a corporate level?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's a big question. I think it's one of these things that has, been ignored to a great extent. A lot of companies will have benefits plans. And so employees have the ability to, go for a massage or physio or chiropractor and have it be covered under their insurance plan. So that's great. Some of them will have like a more of a health spending account, which is nice because it allows the employee flexibility to choose how they spend their money. So maybe you don't need a physio. Maybe you need to see a nutritionist, or maybe you need, it's something else. Maybe you need to see a psychologist because it's the mental health aspect that you want to take care of, and that's the important thing for you. Those kind of health spending accounts give them that kind of flexibility. But I think it's starting to become more in the forefront for reasons you said. I think the pandemic has forced employers to pay a little bit more attention to that, and help their employees. And I mean, I encourage employees that are sort of going back to the workplace. It's always great to have a conversation with your employer, because you don't know what they can do to help you until you have that conversation. But I do think it kind of tends to they kind of offer things that are more of the mainstream types of services, more so, for sure, such as physio. Like, most people will have lots of ability to access physio treatment, but not necessarily as much for massage or chiropractic or other services, some of the allied services like nutrition. So I'd say that's probably a bit of a pitfall.
Yes, exactly. At the end, it's important to see the human as a holistic unit, so we cannot disconnect that there is actually a correlation between stress and back pain. About 30% of people, 30% of the cause of back pain comes from stress. And we even notice, like, we don't have to do too many researches knowing that as soon as you get a bad news, or if you are overworking, overcommitting, even if you didn't have a good sleep right away, you're gonna have tight neck, tight shoulders, lower back pain. So this is just a psychosomatic reaction of the body when we are bringing so much cortisol and stressors in our body. So it's very important to know that we are a holistic being. And like you say, how much do we miss to be talking to our neighbor and to our colleague and sharing a joke, and that's also needed. So definitely, I totally believe on the hybrid approach, where you can actually get to share times with your colleagues and energy, and then also you can be at home those days that are snowing, let's say. So there is always a way to blend it. Just to finish our conversation today, which it was amazing to know who you are and all the passion and all what you do for improving and bringing optimal life in our community. My last question, which I'm sure many of the audience, the listeners have in their mind, is related to tips. Why don't you just give us 2 tips to implement at the workplace when we are experiencing neck pain?
Oh, that is a tough question, because 2 is so few. But if I had to narrow it down to 2, I would say move more. So, our bodies don't like when we stay in one place, whether you're sitting at a desk or you're standing or you're walking, whatever the activity is. The more you can change what you do through the day and vary your activities, the happier your body will be. So if you've been sitting for a while, get up and stand, walk around the room, go get a drink of water. If you've been standing for a while, sit down or put your foot up on a little step, but do something to change what you're doing, because staying in one position and doing the same thing over and over and over again is probably one of the worst things that we can do. And if you can just have a little bit of that sort of mindset when you're at work, it will help you to avoid a lot of pain or reduce pain that you're experiencing.
And number 2?
Number 2, I would say, is posture. So whether it's posture at your desk, so good sort of up nice and straight, head over the shoulders over the hips, proper low back support, shoulders open, with a keyboard tray, rather than sort of hunched over your laptop doing this sort of thing. Being up nice and open is key. Or if it's a physical job you have, apply postural concepts to how you lift, right? A flat back, bend at the knees, bend at the hips, avoid repetitive movements, and avoid lifting awkward things in an awkward way. So keep the item close to you, avoid bending and twisting, but paying attention to your posture and how you move when you're lifting and carrying and doing a physical job, as well as when you're sitting at your desk, is probably the second tip that I would say.
Yes, exactly. I like to finalize our talk with specific tips so you can get these nuggets and you can practice at home. So number 1, As always, this is the winning answer always. Motion is lotion. So keep moving, my friends. Keep moving. That's what we need to improve our bone density, to retain our muscle, and prevent sarcopenia. We don't want to lose muscle. Remember, muscle equals longevity and a strong body. And number two, for sure, improving your posture. And I know every time we say posture, we definitely reset our posture because we tend to get lazy and forget about this, and this definitely will create more damage in our body. So remember to maintain your body nice and long and use props by supporting your joints, your elbows, your hands, and making sure that your body is aligned. Actually, we'll publish very soon an article about what to do when you're home. How can we use pillows? How can we use elevators to have proper parallel joints so we don't really hurt our bodies? So thank you so much, Michelle. It's been great 30-minute chatting about back pain, not only for workplace, but also for pregnant women. I always like to share all the different spectrums of back pain that comes, and also give you solutions that are easy to implement. Remember that you can start simply by adding 1 minute of stretches. Perhaps you don't have to do a 5 minutes, but you can start with 1 minute by having reminders in your phone and practice it every day to see the difference. So thank you so much, Michelle. I can't wait to have you next week. If you have any questions with Michelle, where can we find you, Michelle?
So you can connect with me on my website, so physioplushealth.com. You can reach me. LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me directly, and that just comes to my email. So it's michelle@physioplushealth.com. That's probably the best, fastest way to get a hold of me. But you can always go through the website, and if there's anything in particular that you want to get a hold of me for, they'll be able to forward it to me that way as well.
Super, super. And for everybody, remember to make comments and share this talk with people that could find benefits from listening to this. So thank you so much, and stay moving and also maintain your posture. Remember that together we are stronger.
We invite you to subscribe to this channel and share with your community. Please leave comments below, and if you like the episode, click the like button. Have a beautiful day.